Salvete omnes. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's been a little bit, but we are going to continue our coverage of Caesar Book 5 of the Gallic Wars. Recap. The Romans have decided to leave the camp. Right? Ambiorix has suggested that it might not be safe for them here in their camps. Not because his group of people is going to be any threat to them, but a lot of the other Gauls are upset, and a whole bunch of Germans are headed this way. So, if you stay in the camp, you might become besieged, and yeah, things might not turn out well for you. You might starve to death, or just end up being overwhelmed. So, after a lot of debate, the Romans have decided that it is in their best interest to leave. And they do. And, of course, they are ambushed. Of course they are, right? So that happened in 32. The enemy's trick worked. They've gotten the Romans out of the camp. And they've ambushed the enemies, the enemy has ambushed the Romans as they've gone down into this little valley. So not very advantageous for the Romans, as Caesar says at the end of 32. They began to fight in a location very unequal for our men, or very disadvantageous for our men. So let's pick up in 33. Tum demum titurius, qui nihil ante provideset, trepidare et concursare cohortesque disponera, haec tamen ipsa timide atque ut eum omnia deficere viderentur. Quod plerum quo eis accidere consuevuit, qui in ipso negotio consilium capra coguntur. So, a reminder, Titurius is, there had two commanders to make the decision, right? Sabinus, Quintus Titurius Sabinus, and Lucius Aurunculeius Cotta. Titurius wanted to leave the camps. He thought it was in their best interest to flee quickly, beat the Germans kind of out of town, and then they could join up with the rest of their forces and kind of have a bigger defense against any sort of advancing Germans. Whereas Cotta wanted to stay in the camp. So Titurius has decided to leave. So then finally, Titurius, and this is brutal, who had not foreseen anything, or who had foreseen nothing ahead of time. I'm translating ante as ahead of time. It's kind of redundant, right? It's really kind of hammering home this idea. Ante pro. Before, seeing ahead of time, nothing. So he didn't foresee anything before this. So he's like, nah, it's perfectly safe. There's no way there could be any sort of ambush or anything. Titurius is an idiot. Then we get a bunch of infinitives. Trepidare et concursare cohortesque disponera. And why? Why are these infinitives? We don't have anything that you could have governing these infinitives. Theoretically, viderentur possibly down here, but that's actually part of this ut clause down here, I believe. And so we can't really have it going with the infinitives up here. It's governing its own infinitive, deficere. So what do we do with those? You've got a couple of choices. You could supply an understood began. He began to kind of hesitate and run around and displace the cohorts, or just kind of scatter the cohorts everywhere. So you could put an understood began in there. You also have the option of translating these as what are called historical infinitives, and that is the idea is that Romans, for very intense action, decide to, or occasionally will use the infinitive rather than any sort of conjugated form of the verb. So you could treat these as if they were imperfects or perfects. He kind of hesitated and ran around and scattered the cohorts. So you have either choice. Neither one of them is wrong, really. They are both perfectly proper uses of the infinitive. Um, you get... You do have to supply, like, another verb here, like, he did, I think. He did these things, these very things. And again, we don't have really any verbs governing those, but these things he did. And you get aqua linking this adverb and this ut clause that is behaving as an adverb. So he began to do them timidly, and he did them with the result that it seemed, Vida Raintor, that all things seemed to fail him, to be deficient, right? So Titurius is doing everything so kind of timidly, so he's not quite sure, right? This is kind of the trepidare, this is the disponere, concursare, right? All of these actions are not very confident. He's running around, kind of starts over on the left, and then, let me change my mind, let me think about going over here. Well, I'm not sure what we'll do. All right, and that's the disponere, right? He's displacing the cohorts. Just kind of go over there. Oh, well, actually, half of you go over there. Is that what I want? No. So all of this things, everything is seeming to fail him. So he's being timid, and he's just kind of looking like a general doofus. Caesar gives him kind of a break in the second half. Which thing? I think quote here is just relative pronoun referring to the previous actions, which is accustomed to happen to people often, several times, usually for plerumqua. This sort of thing is very often accustomed to happening to those people who are forced to come up with a plan, to capere consum, to seize an idea, to come up with a plan in the business itself, in the matter itself, or in the situation at hand. So, yeah, when you're just kind of winging it, flying by the seat of your pants, you're going to do things perhaps timidly, and just occasionally or often going to look like you have no idea what you're doing. Which is exactly what Titurius is doing. He just thought we just need to run away from the Germans as quickly as possible. That's what Caesar would do. Caesar would use speed, and so we should use speed and nothing else. Don't use intelligence or forethought. No, just speed. At kota, qui cogitaset haec passa in itinerar accidera, atco ab eum causam perfectionis autor non fuissent, nulla in re communi saluti deerat, et in appellandis cohortandis quo militibus imperatoris et in pugna militis officia praestabat. But, and this is said is a but, right? A contrasting conjunction. At is a little bit stronger than said. It's kind of like it's a strong contrast. But on the other hand, kata. Why do I want these? So, who had thought that indirect statement that these things were able to happen on the journey, and because of this reason, for this reason, had not been the creator or the instigator of this departure. So, Kanta, who had thought ahead? Let's see. He was deficient, deerat. He was deficient nulla in re. He was deficient in no respect, in no manner, in no situation. Was he lacking for the common safety? Kind of for the safety of all. So he's not just trying to save his own skin, he's saving his soldiers' skin as well, right? So he was deficient for the common safety in no respect. And in appellandis cohortandis qua militibus imperatoris, et in pugna militiis officia praestabat. So we get two different prepositional phrases, right? You get et in appellandis cohortandis qua militibus imperatoris, et in pugna militis. So you get these two different inns, one much longer than the other, right? Officia Praestabat is governing both of those. So, Kata, who was not being a doofus, he displayed the obligations, it's the duties, right? He displayed or showed or performed almost for Praestabat the duties, and you get two different situations. You get the duties of a general or a leader and of a soldier. So he displayed the obligations or the duties of a general in this act, in appellandis cohortandis quo militibus, in kind of assigning appellandis to address or kind of talk to the soldiers. So in addressing, maybe assigning the soldiers, and encouraging cohortandis qua militibus. So in addressing and encouraging the soldiers, he displayed the duties of a general, not an emperor, but a general. And he displayed the duties or obligations of a soldier in the fight. So he's not just telling people what to do, he's also doing it himself. So Titurius is an idiot. Cotta is the one who should have been solely in charge. And you got to wonder why they were sharing the duties. Is it something like Titurius comes from a fancier family, and so Caesar kind of felt like he's like, all right, well, he went through all the training, so he should be a commander. But I'm also going to put Cotta there because Cotta's actually qualified. Who knows? But you will see a very distinct difference between the way Titurius is portrayed and the way Cotta is portrayed. All right. I'm trying to figure out why. Obviously, these are subjunctives, and I'm trying to remember or think about why I would want them to be subjunctives. I think these would be relative clause of characteristic. Cotta, who was the sort of person that had thought ahead and had not been the creator. So, I think you can make it a relative clause of characteristic. Yeah. So ultimately, whether you know why it's subjunctive or not, you don't have to translate it any differently than you would a typical subjunctive, just who had thought about that these things would happen. He does what he's supposed to do as a leader, as a soldier. Cum propter longitudinem agminis minus facile omnia per se obira et quid quoque loco faciendum esset providere possent userunt pronuntiare ut impedimenta reliquerent atque in orbem consisterent. All right, so we get a cum clause here, right? Cum not followed by an ablative, so we'll start with the when, we'll look for a subjunctive. But let's tackle the stuff around or between that and see what we can come up with. Propter longitudinem agminis, prepositional phrase, because of the length of the column. So the soldiers are in a long line as they're marching from one camp to the other, and they had to perhaps get into a longer line than normal to go through this valley. Kind of had to stretch out and thin up. Do you thin up? I don't know. Because of the length of the column, less easily to obira. It was less easily to basically kind of do all of the things, to accomplish all the things, or to meet all the things through themselves. And what must be done, quid faciendum esset, what must be done, indirect question plus a gerundive of necessity. So what must be done in which location? Providere possent. So, when they were able, so a simple, just when they were able to foresee that they were able to kind of do all things less easily because of the length of the camp, or the length of the train, So you could translate just simply when. I think a because or a since works as well. Since they were able to kind of see that all of these things were going to be difficult, right? It's not just a simple get in a line and fight. Since they saw that this would be harder, they ordered somebody. We don't have a kind of a subject of pronunciare. You could perhaps want that to be passive. They ordered it to be announced, or they ordered somebody. They ordered, the messengers understood to announce. I would say indirect command here. They announced, they ordered that they announce, or basically tell the soldiers to leave behind your luggage, your baggage, and to stand together in a circle. So, think about old Western movies, the whole idea of circling the wagons is really kind of what's going on here, right? Everybody kind of gets into a circle, their backs all facing each other, and everybody so you basically have this nice ring so everybody can see in every direction. That's what they've done. They've literally circled the wagons. They don't have any wagons, they're all on foot, but you get the point. Quod consilium et si in eis modi casu reprehendum non est, tamen incommode accidit, nam et nostris militibus speminuit et hostes ad pugna malacrioris effecit, quod non sine sumo timore et desperatione id factum videbatur. Quod consilium, which plan, referring to the last sentence, right? Which plan, even if it should not be, or it must not be reprehended, it must not be criticized in a situation or a kind of a disaster of this sort, even if it shouldn't be criticized, nevertheless, it happened, or perhaps came about inconveniently. It came about not very well. So this is a great idea. Circle up, defend yourselves against the oncoming enemy. Great idea. But it didn't work very well. 4. I'm trying to think of... Yeah, so we're going to have minuet and effecit. We don't have a subject for those yet. So what you have is 4. It both... It both lessened the hope for our men, diminished, right? It lessened the hope for our men, and it made the enemy more keen to battle, or more keen for the fight. All right, well, what lessened the hope for our soldiers and made the enemy more eager to fight? Quod non sine sumo timore et desperatione id factum videbantur. The fact that it was seen to be done, factum esse, passive, perfect infinitive, it was seen to be done not without the greatest fear and desperation. So, yeah, again, a solid plan, but this is also kind of like a last resort plan. And so our men knew that this is plan Z, right? There is no plan after this. So their hope is being diminished, and the enemy's like, we got them. Right, we've got them surrounded. They're getting up closer and closer together. They have nowhere to run. Let's finish the job. So the fact that it was seen to be done with the greatest fear, or not without the greatest fear and desperation, that fact lessened the hope and made the enemy keener to fight. Praeterea accidit, quod fiere necessa erat. Caesar loves this little phrase. Ut vulgo milites ab signis discederent, quae quisque eorum carissime haberent, ab impedimentis Petra, atque eripera properaret, clamoret fletu omnia complarentur. Not a good way to describe your soldiers. Moreover, praeterea. Moreover, it happened that result clause going off of accidit. It happened, the result was, And you get this quod fieri neces erat, that which was necessary to happen. Caesar likes to do this, right? It's like there was no other choice. That's just what had to happen. So what was necessary to happen happened. Namely that the soldiers in a group will go. In a group departed from their standards, right? And we've talked about this before. The Romans, you follow your flag, you follow your standards, and you march, and that's how you win, with order and efficiency. They departed from their standards. And which things each of them held most dear, qua neuter plural accusative, carissima also neuter plural accusative as the object of haberent. Each of them held, what things, what very dear things they each held, or what they held most dear, or considered most dear. Those things, they hurried to seek these things and to grab these things from their luggage. So they ran away from their standards en masse, and they hurried to find and grab out of their baggage the things which each of them held most dear. And with shouting, with weeping and wailing, everything was filled. All things, the location, the men, the items, whatever, all things were filled with wailing and weeping. So, yeah, not great on the Roman soldiers' part. You can understand it, right? If you are convinced that you're going to die, I might want to die holding maybe a doll that my daughter has made, right? Or a little card or letter that my son has written me. If I'm going to have to die, I might want to die holding those things, right? The things which I consider most dear. So, yeah, I totally sympathize with the soldiers, but that's not how you win and stay alive. That's just how you die nicely. But we're Roman soldiers. We don't want to die nicely. We want to live fiercely. So let's take a look at 34. See if they're going to get out of this situation. It definitely is not looking good. So, 34, Book 5. At barbaris consilium non defuit. Nam duces eorum tota ace e pronunciare userunt, ne quis ab loco discederet. Illorum esse praedam atque illis reservari, quae cumque Romani reliquisent. Proinde omnia in victoria posita existi marent. So, first sentence was quite short, right? But, and again, here's that kind of like strong contrast. But, for the barbarians, a plan was not failing, was not lacking. There was no failing, the plan was not failing for the barbarians. 4. Their leaders, duces eorum, their leaders, here we get this pronunciare again. They demanded, or they ordered to announce, whoever that is, they ordered the messengers to announce, along the whole battle line, in the whole battle line. Tota ake, ablative of, I guess I would say ablative of place where. Their leaders perhaps ordered them to announce to each other, ordered them to announce along the whole battle line that indirect command, ne plus a subjunctive. They ordered that no one, nequis, that nobody should leave from their spot. So, stay in formation is the idea here. So not don't like move from your spot, but don't like desert your arrangement, right? They also shouted that the indirect statement that the plunder was theirs, right? You will have your loot. And they shouted that whatever things, neuter accusative plural, whatever things the Romans relinquished or left behind, these things were reserved for them. So look, y'all, you can have all of the loot and plunder you want, but you gotta win first. So don't leave your spot to go grab that little silver dish over there. The plunder's yours. Everything that the Romans leave behind is reserved for you. But they thought that everything was placed in victory. All right, so for this fact, they thought that everything was placed in victory. Because again, you gotta win and live and survive before you can loot the Romans' stuff. If you get perhaps a little too ambitious, a little bit too cocky, you might end up losing, and then you don't get the loot. Should be obvious. So, remain disciplined, which is what the Romans should do, right? Erant et virtute et studio pugnandi pares. Interesting. Nostri tametsi abduce et a fortuna deserebantur. Very funny. Tamen omnem spem salutis in virtute ponebant. Et quotiens quae cohors procurerat abea parte magnus numerus hostium cadebat. This is a very interesting description. So, they were both in courage and in the zeal of fighting, in the eagerness of fighting, they were pares. They were equals. So both the Romans and the enemies, which is surprising considering that the Romans definitely up here do not look like the sort of people that are courageous or eager for battle. But nevertheless, that's just how good the Romans are, right? Even at their worst, they're better than the barbarians. So they were equals in virtue or in courage, again, in courage and the eagerness of fighting. Our men, even if they were deserted by their leader, that's Titurius, right? Because Titurius is an idiot. And if they were deserted by fortune, by luck, right? So not only is their leader failed them, but even just good luck has failed them. Even if they were being deserted by those things, nevertheless, they put all of their hope, all of the hope of safety, in virtus, in courage. So we don't have good order and arrangement. We don't have a good leader, but we are Romans. We are brave and fierce, and we'll just, just put all of our hope into just our raw ability to fight. And it works. And whenever some cohort or any cohort advances, procurerat, literally runs forth, whenever that happens, from that area, ab ea parte, a great number of the enemy was falling. So the Romans are, again, they're in this little ball, right? But whenever a little branch of them marches out to attack the enemy, they do more damage than they take. And so, well done, Romans. So, how is the enemy going to respond? Qua re anima adversa, ambiorix pronuntiari ubet. Here's pronuntiari now, as opposed to nuntiare. Ambiorix pronuntiari ubet ut procul teleconiciant. Neu proprius accedant et, quam in partem Romani impetum fecerent, cedant. Levitate armorum et quotidiana exercitatione nihil eis nocere posse, rursuse asigna recipientes inse quantor. So, ablative absolute. It's actually been a while since we've had an ablative absolute. Look at that. With this thing noticed, qua re anima adversa, with which matter noticed, Ambiorix orders it to be announced. And so here we get the passive form of the infinitive, as opposed to pronuntiare that we've had a couple of times in the active with seemingly no subject. So it makes more sense for the passive. Ambiorix orders it to be announced that, indirect statement, that they throw their weapons from a distance, and that they not. Neu is, it's ne with So the opposite of ut, and then it's a ve ending. What was originally a ve ending? So you may have seen siwe or seu, which is either or. This is essentially one of the ways of saying neither nor, but used with subjunctives, right? So that they throw their weapons from a distance, and that they not approach any closer. And that in whatever part the Romans make an attack, so wherever the Romans make an attack, they yield, they give way, I will say retreat in this case. So don't stand and fight. If the Romans start to advance from their little circle, then back up, right? Don't stand there and fight, because again, wherever the Roman cohorts advance, a great number of the enemy is falling. So, well, stop it, right? So yield, give way. And then you get this little kind of editorial thing. The lightness of their arms and their daily exercise, or technically ablative, right? So by the lightness, or because of the lightness of their arms, their weapons and armor, and because of their daily exercise, nothing was able to cause harm to them. Nothing was able to be harmful for them. So they should yield. And then you get indirect statement, and he was yelling that, or kind of telling them that they would be fine, right? Nothing could harm them because they could run away quickly enough. They were well trained. And in turn, he orders that they follow the Romans, returning to their standards. So if the Romans advance, then you back up. If the Romans back up, then you advance. And you just kind of keep this constant distance, procul, and just throw weapons. Just attack them from afar. You're going to use your ranged combat, and that is how you're going to defeat the Romans. Don't fight them in hand-to-hand. You will lose. All right. Very good. We will stop there for today. Things still hanging in the balance. The Gauls have not won, but neither have the Romans, right? So the battle appears that it could swing either way. We'll have to see what happens. But we will do that in the next video. So thank you very much for joining me. If you have any questions, comment down below, hit me up in class, or send me an email. With that, I will see you next time. Later.